Reduce each fraction to lowest terms. Part A, 16 minus a squared over a squared minus 8a plus 16. Before we can reduce or cancel anything here, we have multiple terms in the numerator and denominator, so we should factor everything up. So the numerator, 16 minus a squared. There's no common factor, so let's go with two sets of parentheses. It looks like a difference of squares, so everything will be nice and symmetric. 16 is 4 times 4. Minus a squared is positive a times negative a. Now in the denominator, a squared minus 8a plus 16. There's no common factor, so we'll go with two sets of parentheses again. A squared is a times a. We want to find two numbers that multiply to positive 16 and add up to negative 8. So those numbers would be minus 4 and minus 4. Now it may be tempting to just cancel these two out right here. The problem is the signs are different. Right? The order is backwards. So what we want to do here is fix up the minus sign. What I'm going to do is multiply both numerator and denominator both by negative 1. The 1 in the numerator I'm just going to let sit there though. So we can write this as 4 plus a times 4 minus a times negative 1. And then a minus 4 times, let's now distribute this through. So negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. Negative 1 times positive a is negative a. Now we can see we have a 4 minus a here, 4 minus a here. These reduce out. So now all we have left over is 4 plus a on top, a minus 4 on the bottom, and then this whole thing is multiplied by negative 1. And now this is reduced to lowest terms. Part B. Both numerator and denominator have multiple terms, so we need to factor this first. In the numerator, I see these both have a 7 and an x in common. Let's factor out 7x. If you divide the first term by 7x, we're left over with x. You divide the second term by 7x, we're left over with 2. Now, in order to factor the denominator, we should really reorganize this so it's in the right order. So we're going to put the x squared first. The x squared is negative, so we have negative x squared. X term is next. It's also negative, so minus 5x. The last term is 14. There's no negative sign here, so plus 14. So now to factor this, I don't want to have a negative coefficient on the x squared term. Let's factor out that negative 1. So we'll leave the top as it is. 7x times x minus 2. Factor a negative 1 out of the denominator. This will effectively just switch all the signs around to give us positive x squared plus 5x minus 14. Now we're finally in the position to factor the denominator. So let's let the top just sit there. 7x times x minus 2 divided by negative 1 times. There's no common factor in the denominator, so I'm going to go with two sets of parentheses. X squared is x times x. Now we're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 14 and add up to positive 5. So these will be positive 7 and minus 2. So now we can see the x minus 2 in the numerator and denominator. We can reduce those. So all we're left over with is 7x over x plus 7. This whole thing is multiplied by negative 1. Whether you have it in the numerator or denominator or out in front of the whole fraction, it really doesn't matter. We've got a single minus sign out here. Part C. Before you factor anything, note that the denominator only has one term. So it'll be easier and more straightforward to just split this into two separate fractions. I'm going to write this as 14x squared y to the 5th over 7xy plus 7xy cubed over 7xy. So each numerator gets its own copy of the denominator. On this first fraction, we can reduce. 14 divided by 7 is 2. We can subtract out the powers of the x's. So 2 subtract 1 is 1 single x. Y to the 5th, y to the 1st. If we subtract the exponents, we get y to the 4th. Plus 7 divided by 7 is 1. X's, those are gone. We reduce those right out. If we subtract the powers on the y's, we get y squared. Now, They didn't mention to factor this completely or not, but we might as well go one extra step and look for a common factor. I see that these two both have y squared in common. So we could factor out the y squared, which will leave us with 2x y squared plus 1. And now either of these two should be a perfectly valid answer, although if they ask you in the problem to factor your answer completely, you've got to have the second one.